Hey, good to see you. Thanks for coming. This is another episode of Wireframe brought to you by Design Systems House. I'm your host, Donnie D'Amato, and today we're going to be talking about intent to interface. And you do not need to adjust your sets. I am wearing glasses today. This is actually a pair that for my prescription. So this is new. But speaking of new, I have a new guest on the show today. I want to introduce everybody to Farid. Farid, it's good to see you. Thank you for showing up on the show today. Happy to have you. Please introduce yourself to the folks listening in and watching about who you are and what you're doing.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be on the show. My name is Farid. I'm living in Bay Area. Been in tech for 15 years. Started as software engineer, then moved into design because I really wanted to iterate faster. And then switched into the product. Been working with other big, large companies. And yeah, for the last couple of years, I've been focusing a lot on the design systems because this is like very interesting topic for me. I'm always into generative experiences. So that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today.
Yes, it is. Yeah, we're absolutely going to jam on this. I mean, Farid and I spoke, I think earlier this month. We had a little chat about, getting Farid on the show because it was such a great chat. And I almost wanted to record that chat. I don't know if you did, but that was a great chat. So I was like, I got to get Farid on to talk about a lot of the work because we met when I think you reached out to me when you were doing, or maybe I reached out to you when you were doing all the oh god, what was the name of your
Reflect.
Inspect and Reflect? That's right. So you're doing the Inspect and Reflects, and basically, well, you explain what that was all about.
Yeah, the core purpose of Inspect and Reflect is to try to reverse engineer publicly available design systems and go and take a look into their products to see what kind of decisions they were made. So I'm not inviting people who actually worked on the design system on purpose so that we could like take a look from externally and see what are the reactions, what are the thoughts are, what are the decisions people were making, and also learn from the best in the industry. Like if there are some interesting best practices, how things are documented, or what kind of content areas they added to their design system that helps to improve the adoption. That's all the things that we're looking for. So that's an open panel session where we take a look into globally publicly available design system and just inspect and reflect.
Yeah, that was great. I love those sessions, and you know what? It was really interesting about it too is something that you mentioned, is that you purposefully don't try to bring someone who worked on the system into that that meeting or that meetup, right? So why did you decide that as a kind of a stick in the ground for these meetups?
First of all, to be honest, it's really hard to get speakers who are actually working on these publicly available design systems. And the second thing, we all understand within the larger organizations, there's so many political things happening, and we just didn't want to go into that. We only care about the craft. So that's why this kind of unbiased perspective on things with the fresh perspective could bring some interesting insights.
Yeah.
And from the feedback from the community, people love it. So a lot of things to learn, a lot of practices. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I thought it was very interesting. I mean, there was a little bit of controversy, I think, when we did the Nord one, if you remember, right? Because we had someone who worked on Nord found out that there was going to be this thing, and they were like, please don't join. It has nothing to do with Nord, et cetera, et cetera. And a couple of people who have already done a couple of these things kind of had to explain and say, hey, it's okay. It's all right. Because the thing is, I think we're defensive in our work, right? When we're talking about the work that we do as designers, developers, we're defensive in the work, especially if you think that someone's going to, have this whole thing where we're going to talk about your system publicly, but you're not invited, right? It feels a little like uneasy, it's uncomfortable to not be invited to talk about your work, and other people are going to talk about your work that don't know about your work. But the thing that I really value in that setup is that this is the thing that everyone is actually doing. All you've done is
Mm-hmm.
made it into an event, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the thing that I'm basically saying is that look, you're going around to other design systems and figuring out what they did, but you have absolutely no context about why they made those decisions. So all
Mm-hmm.
you're left to do is kind of assume or experiment or otherwise try to figure out and justify why they made those decisions and then align it to your system. So all that we were doing in those things, right? When I was on that show for a little while, all we were doing was doing the exact same thing we would normally do privately in an open forum to kind of let people know what we would think as experts building systems when we're building our own systems and going, okay, if I look at Adobe Spectrum and I see that they made this decision, why did they make that decision? And let me look through the stuff and see if there's anything in there. But if I can't figure it out, then I need to figure out if I agree with that decision or even justify that decision. And putting that on a stage is a really interesting piece of content.
Yeah, the goal is not to critique, is to learn. All of the design systems are very interesting and very mature. And the goal there was to find some interesting golden nuggets of information or like best practices that we really like and we would like to add it to our design system. And also highlight that to the community saying like, oh, when it comes to the decision logging, the Decathlon design system really did awesome job there. So you have those like golden nuggets of insights everywhere. But the goal, again, is not to critique, because we don't know what happened inside, but learn, most importantly.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I want to wrap this part of what we're talking about up because I want to get to the real topic. But the thing that I want to end this part with is there something out of all those sessions that you did that stands out to you the most?
I feel like most important thing is I really admire design systems that are actually being used within the product. So Atlassian design system or Primer design system from GitHub, you can actually see how those components are being used in the product. And that's like the core thing that I wanted to highlight is that this is the level of maturity that everyone needs to get into. That we are not just creating components, but we're actually creating things that are being used in the product. So yeah, like the usage within the product is the main highlight for me.
Yeah, that sounds great. All right, so let's talk about the future, right? Because we talked about the past a little bit, right? And not even really the future because it's happening today, right? It's happening today where we have people who are building interfaces in ways
Mm-hmm.
that have never been built before. And this is admittedly reminding me a little bit of like the original web in some ways, right? Where you are trying to learn what best practices are, suss them out and figure out what are we supposed to do next. So tell me about your outlook right now when it comes to business needs, user needs, how those mesh together in our new way of building.
Love it. I feel like now we are in interesting time where with AI, you can take many hats. You can be a product manager some way, you can be an engineer in some way, you can be a designer in some way, you can be an AI or data scientist in some way as well, right? Because all of the barrier is getting lower. But we all think about what's the core idea of all the apps, right? Is to set up the proper and efficient communication between the user and the server.
Right.
And we agreed that the best one is the interface, right? Where you can go into the app, you can provide some data, you have some specific intent in mind that you would like to achieve, and then you need to do some actions within the app to achieve that. You are sending some data, you are getting this data back from the server, and this is the way how we solve the user problems. The interesting opportunity that I see so far is that historically we've been working separately. Designers, we have customer journey maps, we have user flows. This is the things that we had from the beginning, right? we had UX architects long time ago. I don't know what happened to this role. We don't have it anymore. But that was like a person who was focused on the experience, on the information architecture, on all the like user flows and how user will go through this experience, right? We have product managers who are doing similar thing when they are thinking about the future. They are thinking about, okay, like what kind of capabilities, what kind of acceptance criteria we need to have to enable that user intent. And on another side, and I feel like it's very undervalued, but like with AI, it's becoming more and more popular right now, is actually QA testing.
Okay, QA testing.
Everything that we had in design, this is conceptual phase. The product management, we had some overlays in the ways how they are creating PRT documents. But when the product is built, the actual source, the actual up-to-date flows of how people are going through the app are documented through this QA testing, where they have unit tests, they have integration tests, but most importantly that I would like to highlight is end-to-end test. There are some frameworks that are popular, like Playwright and others. And this is the place where you are documenting in the code how specific scenarios should, what kind of actions user needs to do in order to achieve their goal, right? So there is an intent, there are some actions, and the QA engineers are actually documenting them and writing as a code. So it could be reproducible, and they can make sure that the app is working. So the topic that I wanted to bring today is because AI helps us to lower the barrier, we could start thinking about how we could bring those disciplines together to have like something similar to single source of truth of the app experience, right? Because things that we have as designers in FigJam are getting outdated so fast. PRT documents are getting outdated too fast. But the actual end-to-end tests that QA engineers are writing, they are the source.
Yeah. So I really like the outlook and especially the focus on something that's not just building, right? Because building is very easy, and especially now when you can go ahead and prompt it and it can just happen. Building is very easy at this point. So trying to reintroduce parts of app development back into what we're doing today, because just like you mentioned, like UX architect, gone, right? Just gone. Doesn't exist anymore. And I think a lot of that ends up being is that as a specialty had a specialty to it. Now what's happening, I think, is that many people think that they are experts by their own experiences and unfortunately by their own biases, where they are in their own bubbles thinking, oh, this is the only way of doing this because I say it's the only way of doing this. So I've seen that a lot, and I actually saw a post about where UX researchers came into the scene from academia. Now you don't see UX researchers almost anywhere anymore, right? Because now we're back in the move that fast and break things mentality, because it doesn't cost anything for us to break something. You just break it again and break it again until it starts working, question mark? I don't know. But regardless, I think injecting the processes back into what we used to do just with the new technologies is a really good way of trying to make a better product, right? Because the way that I think about it is like building a bridge, but you start building it with like paper and expecting to drive cars over it, right? It's like, well, okay, we did all this work to build the bridge, but it doesn't work. What happened? Okay, let's build a bridge out of cardboard this time. And you go, well, hold on a second. If we just took some time to research materials, we could build it right the first time. But unfortunately, taking the time to research the materials takes too long. We could have had a bridge already, right? And we could have learned some things. And that's the thing that is always a challenge. But I think the QA part, I think we talk about that even less as an industry, right? The QA part, right? Because what I see at least is people just churning stuff out and sending it immediately to the user and being like, does that work for you? And they say yes or no. And then if it doesn't, then we just go ahead and generate something new instead of even trying to figure out why it didn't work in the first place. So what are you thinking on that?
That's an interesting thought, and I really like your highlight that of the word architect, right? Maybe that will be the future role, right? There will be builders, there will be coordinators, there will be architects who are taking in, like, on a larger scale, how the overall experience is done within our product or multiple products as a part of the portfolio, right? So yeah, I agree with that. Maybe, yeah. So maybe we could talk about the how to get there. Like,
Okay.
okay, now that we know this information, right? There is a signal that is like that is interesting. That we have this kind of framework that is very how to explain. In FigJam, when you're creating those user flows, there is no compilator, right? You can make mistakes. It will not fail. With end-to-end tests, it is a code. If it fails, it fails. So maybe the focus here is to how to enable that, knowing this insight, how to enable designers and product managers to design in a way with like those end-to-end testing frameworks that, again, like you don't need to write code anymore. You can just prompt it and say, okay, like here is my intention. And the interesting signal that I can see that is confirming that this signal is might be an interesting direction is from Claude, from Anthropic, where they introduced this. They had an article on how to write better requirements, and they had this interesting concept called prd.json file.
Okay.
Where you are going through the intentions again, and for the core user flows that user needs to do. So for example, let's take a Notion as an example, right? Where you are opening the app and you need to get access to all your documents, or you need to see all your teams that you are part of. One of the intention might be, okay, I would like to invite my colleague to my document, and what kind of actions it needs to perform in order to get there. The prd.json file is interesting one because they have a value there. Like, first of all, they are going through the steps, and they are also saying if it passes or not passing. So this is the way how, while designing, you are using those kind of prd.json format to prompt and start architecting the flows and understand what kind of edge cases or core cases you need to support in order for this feature to work, for this capability to be available for the user to, again, cover their user intent.
Okay, so let me get this straight here. I think what you're saying here is that instead of prompting an interface immediately, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you're saying is that there is a loop that effectively happens, a feedback loop that happens, that you're basically working with your copilot, your AI, and saying, okay, here's what we need to do, right? Or here's the intent that we need to drive towards. What are the things that we need to do to get there? Is that accurate in terms of the flow, generally speaking, or is there pieces missing?
Yeah, you're right on right on yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, so so now in this loop, you're going back and forth figuring this out. When do you believe it's a good point to say, okay, it's time to break out of the loop and start on the next thing? And then what is the next thing after that loop?
Yeah, maybe another important insight is that those kind of like intentions, this is like additional abstraction layer that, like, if we will put the scale, sits over pages, over screens, right? So when you have intent, user might go through multiple screens, multiple pages, right? They might have edge cases there. They might have different access points. They might have different touch points with this feature or with this data that is like we are working on. So answering to your question, when, right? So this is a part of the planning when you are prompting AI to make things for you, right? Where you can say, okay, like, go and take a look into our code base. Mm-hmm. Try to understand what kind of features do we have. Here is the feature that I'm looking for. Help me to architect that in this format like prd.json. and try to understand, like, here we are trying to switch the mental model. Instead of drawing all these rectangles or flow charts within the FigJam, we are trying to put that into like JSON format so that AI could understand, okay, for this feature to work, we need this kind of actions, those kind of like sub features to be unlocked, right? So answering to your question, when in early stages, and another interesting signal is software engineers, they actually like experts in that field, they actually like to start with tests
With text.
that will help them to
Yeah.
understand, guide them, and build on top of that,
Yeah.
and iterate and like build features on top of that, the test. But you are starting from the beginning because it's much more faster to provide this feedback loop to the AI, because it can take the screenshot, it can go through the actions and click through things, and on the third step, if something is breaking, it will understand that, okay, like this feature, sub feature is not working.
Yeah, because I think, speaking on behalf of some developers, I think we would like that specifically because it's declaring things that we normally might not get from the design team, right? Because the design team ends up being overwhelmed sometimes, and they're just, they need to design screens and pixels and colors and all of this stuff. There's a lot of stuff that they're thinking about, but there's also edge cases, right? Like, I can't tell you the number of times that I have not received what the error look is supposed to be, what the first time user experience is supposed to look like, what the empty state is supposed to look like, all of those things that are effectively edge cases. Engineers typically think about, because the systems that we build upon are going to be in those states, right? Especially like when you're first building out the experience and there's no users for this new feature, there's an empty state. There's a state where there's nothing in this thing, and I got to know, well, is it supposed to be blank or is it supposed to look like something? So I think that's great about where we could figure out more about the intentions as we're going through, right? Where we're looking at what we need and looping through, and then I guess it's basically when. Is there like a feeling about when it's complete, or are you even? I guess there's even more loops, right? Because it's not even just a matter of this. Okay, there's this one single loop, right? There's maybe a little loop, and then there's a bigger loop that you can come on to, and then maybe after that big loop, you go back into the small loop, because we found something in the larger loop that said, oh, well, we got to do something different. We got to go back in the small loop and fill that in before we go back to the bigger loop. So that's I like, but when you compare all of that looping, right? I'm going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and not producing anything yet, right? When you compare that to people who are prompting once and getting something, right? What is it that people want? And I'm talking about from the business side, right? When the business looks at those two people and they're looking at both of those things, and one person is prompting and prompting and prompting and not getting anything visual for them to like latch onto yet, but the other person prompts once, gets something visual, right? Because they're visual creatures. What are you sensing in that?
The beauty of AI and all these tools, the iteration time is not weeks or days.
Yeah.
The iteration time is minutes, right? You can iterate within the plan, just start brainstorming on this feature, like the reason why it started, right? Because of the user feedback, because of some of the metric that we're trying to improve. We had some hypotheses that we would like to validate and try to conceptualize. But of course, we need to understand what kind of types of initiatives we're performing. If it's a little improvement, we don't need to worry about that. If it's a bug, we don't need to like this kind of approach might not be applicable. It might be applicable for like the end-to-end playwright tests. But this approach, what I'm talking about, is more applicable for like big bets, for the large features that will go through the app in multiple pages. We'll have multiple touch points, multiple access points. We will need to think about the activation. We will need to think about, okay, it works for one user, but what if the same case is applied within the team? What if they have different roles? And what I'm trying to explain is that this kind of level of abstraction helps to see those flows in much more easier way and compare it. And since you are not writing code, it's very token efficient. So you can just generate the markdown file and start going through that. And like from like experience perspective, the abstraction layer is this intention. From the UI perspective, the abstraction layer that I like to use is ASCII diagrams. So
Okay.
the idea for this is not to jump into like one specific page and try to improve or add access point for this feature. The idea here is to work on this like customer journey map level of abstraction, try to figure it out what kind of things are there and how it will be different, or what kind of things will need to change.
Okay. And now I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because I'd like to know how you measure success in this new workflow, really, right? Because again, I'm
Mhm.
looking, from the original thing that I was asking about. Okay, we have someone in the C-suite that's looking at two people. One's prompting a whole bunch and not returning anything. Another person is churning out UIs. How do we show success to the C-suite and be like, okay, this direction is going to go is going to win?
Yeah. So answering to your question is when it's done, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we will go through these iterations, first of all, the iterations will not take you weeks. It will take you like minutes,
Right.
right? If you are not just creating a PRD document that is outside of the context. You're creating a PRD document within the code base, within the course or cloud code that has access to the code base and can capture all these edge cases and like enrich all of them, right? The second loop is when you start with phases and you are trying to, okay, like let's start simple, implement some of the features, close the loop, and the definition of done in that case, if the playwright tests are actually passing. They
Okay,
are not
wait. So,
failing.
so hold on a second, because are you okay? So you're writing playwright first. Is that what's happening?
You, what I'm trying to bring
Okay,
here
go ahead.
is different mental model.
Okay.
We have deliverables in mind as designers, as product managers, as
Mm-hmm.
QA engineers. What I'm trying to say at the end of the day is just a markdown file
Mm-hmm.
as more advanced version of PRD, where you document the intentions and actions and some screens in ASCII format. Then
Okay.
bigger loops are happening when you are actually implementing those features right away in the code base. And the last loop is when, from all this markdown file that you've generated, you are creating playwright tests that are actually going through the flows and going through the new features that you've added with the right selectors.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, the way how we can say if it's done, if the tests that we wrote at the end, playwright plus code, is actually passing.
Okay. All right. So I think I get a little bit closer what's going on here. Again, work would be here because this new
This is
stuff
new
for me.
concept, so let's brainstorm.
New
Yes.
stuff for me. So if I understand correctly now, so basically, yeah, there's a markdown file that gets generated over several loops of trying to figure out what to do. There's eventually an experience that comes out of that through flows, but maybe even simultaneously, it doesn't. I mean, maybe it's not even on the outer edge. You could have the actual experience and the tests for that experience to happen near simultaneously because they have to match, right? Because
Yes.
if they don't match, and because I could see how you might want to offset them a little bit because you're still iterating on the first part. So as you iterate on the first part, you might not be on the second part. But then I could see also a argument for, hey, baseline, it needs to do this
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what the other experience does. Here's our baselines of playwright tests that we need to hit. Meanwhile, if you want to do some fun animation stuff, you can add that if you like, but if it doesn't hit the baseline, you fail, right? So is that closer to what we're talking about?
The core idea is to solve the user intention as fast as possible, right?
Yep.
So like those markdown files and those kind of levels of abstractions are supporting AI. It's like more advanced version of the plan,
Okay.
where you have markdown file, you have some ASCII diagrams integrated into that. You have like core goal is to make sure that the user is happy and he goes or she, like they go through the flow as fast as possible, as efficient as possible. And the closing loop of that is the actual playwright test, because when you are working with AI, you need to provide those feedback loops. And the best way to provide those feedback loops is the tests, the linters, so that it could see, it could check the logs, it could take a snapshot of all the network requests and see what's happening there.
Okay. Now, what's next in this, right? Because it's, I mean, granted, something I'm very unfamiliar with is I think people are probably paying attention to, because Farid's trying to explain it to me, and I think I'm getting it, but and I'm sure there's people out there that are like, Donnie, you're such an idiot. It's clear, it's obvious, but I want to get away from me being an idiot for right now for a moment, because it doesn't look good for me on the show. But what's the next step for you in this process, right? Because it sounds like you're very confident in this process being a positive success direction for AI and experience design. What do you think would be next for here?
So I have my own pet project. I call it my personal labs, right? Where
Okay.
I play with these new interesting concepts and try new things. The tool is called Infa.ai. It's a Chrome extension that lets you tag and visualize components in the browser. Components was always just the first dimension of getting to the stage, right? Components is just like the communication between the server and the user, right? So this is like our language, how we can communicate with each other. But most importantly, is on top of those building blocks, we have intentions, we have actions as a part of that. So I did some POCs. I had it available before, but I removed it because it's too buggy and I need to revisit it. But you could turn on the Chrome extension and go through the flow just by clicking through the screens. It will capture what kind of component is involved in this flow. It will capture what kind of page. Again, I'm trying to introduce new abstraction layers that, instead of like being like, to make it very token efficient, the collaboration between AI and the user. And those kind of intentions and actions in Gherkin format. This is like coming from test-driven development, TDD.
Okay.
Approach is getting popular right now.
Yeah.
And that's like, we are closing the loop of our discussion, where now people are using this TDD Gherkin format to explain the features. Instead of saying what kind of components to use or what kind of screen to design, you are just explaining the intention and the actions that the user needs to go through. And AI will help you to enrich those documents with more insight, and will say, okay, like, for this specific intent, user needs to go through 5 screens. They need to do 12 clicks. It takes them on average 5 minutes, right? The interesting part of that, when we have this kind of abstraction, is you can do that for your competitors as well.
Right.
I don't know about you, but like the long time ago, the way how I've done work, I just screenshotted everything. I just screenshot, okay, like we are focusing on the booking flow, right? Or getting credit card issues, right? Just go through the whole flow. I remember there was a term called wire flows, where you are actually capturing where user needs to click in order to get there. You are. I also did color coding for the lines, connecting lines, showing us like this is the core path and this is the edge core case and this is the edge case.
Wow. Okay.
And but the main idea that I want to share is that now with AI, by connecting Playwright end-to-end tests, you can actually make it more automated and more easier, and it will be actually up to date, and it will be not just like some concept. It will be like actual code that is like connected to the ground.
Okay. Now, I want to talk about the first thing I want to talk about is for Infa, because that was kind of related to the inspect and reflect stuff you were doing as well. But for Infa, I really like how you started with the components and had something in mind to basically expand it, not just with the components, but larger compositions, and then from there even flows, right? So you're basically trying to figure out how to build up into these much larger experiences to really document these much larger experiences, right? And I think the thing that I think we both agree on here is everything has a foundation of intention, right?
Mm-hmm.
The reason why the button is there, the reason why the headline is there, the reason why we're putting an alert there, all that stuff is based
Mm-hmm.
off of intention. And then that intention is going to drive decisions about what to do where, right? Now, the thing that I'm going to maybe challenge you a little bit on, just a little
Please.
bit, I'm going to a little poke, is bias. So one of the things, I mean, I spoke about this at Converge last year, and you know, something that I really want to focus on in some of my more up and coming work is this idea of bias when we design, and
Mm-hmm.
especially if there's cases in which AI takes the wheel, even if that taking the wheel is just putting a little pinky on it and going, oh, okay, I'm just gonna, you know, turn the wheel a little bit, or if it's the full two hands and you know, spinning it and doing a fishtail. Like there's different thresholds of taking the wheel, but in some cases, what might happen is you might get a pattern or a composition or a flow that is actually, while it might be something that we've seen before in the world, might not be the best thing because we are still stuck in this loop of doing the same thing over and over again and not actually exploring a creative option that could actually break out of the loop and go, wait a minute, it would be better if we did this. So is that something you would be concerned about, or do you think that that's not important? Not, I wouldn't say not important, but not something to be concerned about.
It is, of course, important when it comes to like governmental, finance, legal domains, right? But I'm mostly interested in like working in productivity tools.
Okay.
So that's why it's just about efficiency. It's about the time, right? It's about the quality, how fast you can do the work, how efficient you can get the result, right? So the like I agree about the bias. I feel like if the core metrics about the time spent and clicks to value are good and people are not complaining, we solve the challenge. Like we achieved our goal, right?
Hmm.
Hopefully, in the future, and I really hope maybe we will get there. People could like with the power of background agents from Cursor,
Hmm.
where you can just prompt it and say, "Here is the flow, the booking experience." I really don't like the way how I'm selecting, for example, seats because I have a child and it's not like considered or something else, right? So like I could provide this kind of feedback, and hopefully in the future the background agents will just spin up custom version specifically for you with all this like generative UI and but like capturing the core intention and enriching with some of your feedback, with some your insights. And maybe there will be in the future automated A/B testing where it could just provide on the large scale different flows, different experiences, how to get to the value, and like through different ways, maybe different messaging, different experiences, and just the scenario that works the best wins and becomes a production. So that might be something for the future.
Okay. So I'm gonna tug on this a little bit. Okay. So you in what you were talking about, you know, I don't like the way that the booking experience works. Okay.
Hmm.
When you say I or you,
Hmm.
right? You know, like
Hmm. Hmm.
who is you? Is that a designer or a PM, or is that the user?
Oh, of course, user.
It is
Yes.
the user. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
because the thing that I'm thinking about is and I actually had this conversation with some folks at a meetup yesterday, is basically the death of UI. And we were that's very like you know, a doomsday kind of situation, but ultimately the kind of thing that I'm trying to talk about here is that hyper personalization, I think,
Hmm.
is where we might be going, or I personally would like to see us go,
Hmm.
where if I don't like the booking experience as a user, I'm not waiting for the company to
Hmm.
improve the booking experience,
Hmm.
right? The system will improve itself, right? Such that I get the best experience that I'm looking for, right?
Hmm.
So when that happens, right, you're going, I mean, when all the work of prompting and figuring out what the user needs and stuff like that, I mean, I think that still has value. But I think what ends up happening there is instead of choosing, okay, you know, for us to say, okay, the button is here, the modal is here, all that stuff here, I don't think as designers, we're choosing what component it is any longer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead,
Mm-hmm.
the job comes all the way back to UX architect, right? It comes all the way back because now we're trying to figure out what the experience is, right?
Yep.
What is the end thing that this user needs to do? They need to book a
Yep.
flight or book a trip, right? That's one line in the markdown file. And then AI literally just takes the whole wheel. That's again where the bias comes in and stuff like that, and then user intent comes in. I mean, I'm sure that there would be, a user that unfortunately ends up with several different modals on the page and trying to get through modals because that's what has been learned on their experience. But that's you know what is your take on that? Where the designers I see a little bit of your thinking in there where it's look, we're just gonna take a copilot, prompt it out, and then all the pixel pushing, that's not even part of it any longer. Now again, we're focusing on the experience again. Is that true? Do you think is I mean I know the the severity of like there's no UI anymore, at least ones that we can
Mm-hmm.
control. But what do you think about that direction?
Yeah, I feel like the we've been doing that for a long time, right? I'm not like inventing something new here. This concept was there. I'm just saying like let's try to align different disciplines to unify the taxonomy that we are using. And
Hmm.
instead of saying this is acceptance criteria, this is user flow, this is customer journey map, those are the session metrics, those are playwright tests. Let's just create an abstraction that all of us agree. Intention, and the actions that users needs to perform in order to achieve. And within intention, we will capture what was the goal. The success of this intention is how fast we can serve the customer and get things done, right? With some of the things right now, when we are thinking about those kind of abstractions, you will be able to see that some of the intentions are actually faster done in Claude
Hmm.
or ChatGPT.
Hmm.
With the power of MCPs and now MCP apps as well, we like the intentions, the need for like framework of intentions is much more needed than before
Yeah.
because within the MCP, when you are thinking about the intentions and you are designing those agents, the cool part is that you can put the same intentions into your evals, into your evaluations. How will you define that the AI responded properly,
Right.
that the
Defining
user achieved
success.
their goal,
Hmm.
right? So
Hmm.
they came here to book the experience. They are not looking what's the weather.
Hmm.
And we need to understand, okay, for this intention, how many conversations happen? What kind of clarification questions we had to ask? How many times people just say, okay, just connect me with the real person. Like I cannot do this anymore. Those kind of intentions will also match and be used within the evals. So answering to your question, for some of the things, it's much more easier to do right now with AI instead of UI,
Right.
but it's not applicable for everything.
Right.
There's a spectrum of things that we are performing. There is like general tasks, like booking a calendar or booking a flight or buying something. And there are specialized tools like Figma, for example. If you are focusing on very specific important detail on micro interactions or some other things, like you need the UI, right? You need the experience to like have this like things being solved. But like the core thing is the intention, and there are different like spectrum of like complexities of actions included into this intention that more efficiently can be solved with AI, just AI, and some of them require some UI experience itself.
Yeah. Now, I think it's interesting as talking about this particular topic about okay, there's things that we could offload to AI and things that we need UI for. When you have this thing that has taken the internet by storm, formerly Clawbot,
Hmm.
formerly Moltbot, now OpenClaw as of today.
Hmm.
It literally got changed today. Um, for those of you who don't know what this is, if you're not on the internet somehow, I don't know how that's possible. But basically, this thing that has had several names for lots of different reasons is a way, as far as I understand, of being able to um, chat or connect really through an existing channel that you might have to then do something else on another channel, right? So, as an example, instead of you specifically going to, I don't know, Gemini, I think is the best probably example, Google Gemini, and saying, turn off, the lights in the bedroom, which you can do if you've set up your bedroom that way. Instead of having to have that specific channel, you could go onto Discord and have a message there that plays a Spotify playlist in your house or on your car or whatever. So it's connecting other apps to each other that have never been connected before, um, and kind of unlocking possibilities. Before you get excited about trying that out, it's riddled with security vulnerabilities. You have to be careful about that. I'm not condoning you trying it out, so please be careful with that because just taking a moment to think about it could definitely cause some problems. The big problem being prompt injection, but um, with something like that, right,
Hmm.
where now we're taking existing systems, connecting them together, and assuming that these things are going to be secure somehow, you know, does that fit into new experiences and maybe even not needing to create new ones? I mean, what are you thinking on what is your take on the whole Clawbot situation right now?
It's an interesting concept where they just focused on the experience and focus on solving the biggest problem, right? Of like getting and controlling remotely your AI agents and getting status updates while you are not driving. Do not do that while driving. While you are walking with your dog, and like you can just wipe code in parallel, right? And you will have a Cloud code doing its job on your computer or on Mac Mini that is like remotely connected to your phone through different messaging apps. Uh, I agree with you that it's like huge security issues there because you are just giving full access to your whole system.
Right.
Yeah, but I still like it's a nice concept. There will be some flashes in the industry where there will be a startup like that will be very popular and then they will like just die in like 2 months, 3 months, because Cloud Code, they already been working on the co-working agent
Hmm.
where they have chat, they have code, and then they have co-worker, right? And yeah, they are focusing on that issue. They're just, I guess, taking some time to make it more secure. If you try their Chrome extension, every time when you're opening a new website, they are specifically asking you to approve. Do you approve for us to get access to this specific domain or
Oh
not?
wow.
So they are
Okay.
very cautious on that. But when it's just like hungry startuppers, they don't have too many risks and they can just do stuff.
Hmm. Hmm.
They can move faster. But I feel like the Cloud Code, Anthropic will do its job
Yeah.
better in like a couple weeks.
Yeah, I hope so too. Um, I know I pivoted a little bit there. I want to make sure that we covered everything that you wanted to cover about the effectively like spec-driven development is something also that GitHub was pushing around too. Did we cover everything that you wanted to cover in that topic, or is there anything more that we want to share here?
I think the core insight here is that now that AI is lowering the barrier for different disciplines and everyone as an engineer wants to be a designer, wants to be a product manager, this kind of level of abstraction, unified abstraction across the disciplines, is something interesting to explore. In the future, I will love, instead of writing a PRD in some kind of document, or instead of writing markdown file in the cursor, I would love to have auto-generated customer journey map
Hmm.
where I could dive into specific experience. And instead of thinking what kind of screens we need to design, what kind of components we need to use, I'm just saying, here is the user problem. Here is the user flow that we have right now. Just generate 10 experiences for me. I'll
Hmm.
come back in 10 minutes, we'll check and we'll tell you what kind of changes to make. So instead of, like, again, different abstractions level, right now we are not thinking about how to write a function in the code.
Right.
Right now we are not thinking, like we are thinking, but like not so much as before on the architecture or how front end or back end data structure is. What I'm trying to say is that this might be the future thing that is not only applicable for the user experience interfaces, but also applicable for AI conversations where people just want to get their job done, right? And this is the intention, and this is like the framework that we could think about. I'm doing some interesting POCs within my labs, personal labs, where I already have a concept called pages, flows, and components. And I did some interesting concepts there, POCs, where you can just provide a domain
Okay.
and it will generate customer journey map for you. It will tell what kind of main intentions are available within this product. For these specific intentions, how many action steps user needs to go through, how many screens, how many components are involved. And the cool part, because it's a Chrome extension, you can also compare that with your competitors and see maybe they have more efficient way to get to this, like to solve this user intention. So like this is like an interesting journey. I'm just playing around, seeing what's working, what's not. But yeah.
Yeah, no, that was excellent. I just that alone, that Chrome extension that you're basically saying, look, we can quantify and in some ways qualify how you and your competitors achieve the same goal, right? As a
Mm-hmm.
user, right? You could go ahead and say it takes 6 clicks over here, but 14 clicks over there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to affect, your signups, your payments, all that stuff, because you are putting too many blockers in the way of the things that users are actually doing, right? So I think there's something really interesting there in particular, and it's funny too because you're talking about going into any domain and gathering data about that domain, whether it's your domain or somebody else's. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's something we also share because I thought about that from a visual expression level, where
Mm.
if I want to go to another domain and kind of figure out the idea of dark mode, right?
Mm-hmm.
I could point AI at places and be like, this is dark, this is light, learn this thing. Because in a multidimensional mode ecosystem, if I want to convey the idea of Home Depot, dark, critical, but also in China, well, I don't want any one designer to try to curate that, right? I want to figure out what that means and have it curated for me. And I could, do little tweaks or whatever like that. But I think it's similar thinking about how do we look even larger than the scope of ourselves, right? Because most of the time we're just looking at ourselves. And granted, we kind of talked about this at the top of the show about, you know, looking at other systems and then talking about, we're not even sure what the intentions are sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But all of the context that sits in AI, it could absolutely validate some of the stuff that's going on from all the context that it has to then give you a really informed opinion or even fact in some of these cases if those things allow. So I think there's a lot to take in about going outside of where you're working to get more informed, and it goes back to the research, right? Like that research
Mm-hmm.
that like that's I think the thing that I'm really liking about this is that it's bringing the user research back in, but it's kind of like almost I don't want to say hiding it, but it's hiding it in the AI, right? Because everyone's like AI, right? But if we actually use it for research, we're still using the AI that all of our companies are trying to shove down our throats, but now we're bringing it back to the core of the practice of user experience and the architecting and the research that I think is going to make better products overall, regardless.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound right?
Love it. That's a great summary.
Thank you, thank you. All right, we are coming up to close to the end of the show here, but I do have one last question before I want you to plug some stuff. And the question I have for you here is: there's a lot of designers that are out there. They're looking for jobs. They don't know what to do. The industry's moving so fast, um, and it's very clear that you're obviously leveraging AI in some really interesting ways that I think companies are going to be really interested in as well. Do you have advice for how to I don't want to make a splash, but be successful in this current landscape that we've never seen before? Because it sounds like you have a lot of great insights. You're thinking a lot of things that I've never even considered myself personally. So, any advice on that front about what people should kind of focus on or gear toward to potentially survive in these bad times? We just had a whole bunch of layoffs. So, what are you thinking?
Yeah, it's a tough times indeed, and I'm really feeling sorry for some other people who, yeah, it's a tough time. So indeed, like the pushing drive energy for me is I just want to learn. Like I even recently started learning how to do hardware stuff like
Well,
PCBs and stuff. So yeah, this is like I feel like if we could change the mental model and call ourselves 10x designer, 10x product manager, 10x engineer, right? And remove the previous barriers that we had before. That if I'm designer, I just need to do design work. If I'm engineer, I just need to do the engineering work. If I'm a product manager, I just need to take into the metrics, do some user research, and write PRDs. This is all gone. Like, just break those patterns, and the best way to learn is through doing.
mm-hmm.
Last year, I've burned 7 billion tokens. I invested a lot into AI. I had like the ultra plan with Cursor and Cloud Code. Like I've been like, yeah, it's just like the best investment in yourself. And when you are creating your pet project and Infa, like I'm not planning it to make it as a product. It's just my laboratory.
Mm-hmm.
I'm breaking things and I'm not recommending using it because you will see some breaking changes.
It's all right.
So, and like it breaks, right? The core focus is you're just getting access to my laboratory. And I was able to create backend, front end, and even create my own AI agents. And not just like through like server tool calls, but also client tool calls. One of the interesting concepts that I recently done is that you can just select any element on the website. It will go through all the pages that you have. It will show you similar component structures.
Okay.
So for example, you could select the search bar, and based on these different signals of the styles, accessibility tags, it will show other search bars that might look different, but will serve the same purpose.
Nice.
So the core idea here is to build your own pet projects. I feel like in 2026, it's a must, unfortunately. That's the only way to grow. Yeah, and just push yourself and do not think that you need to like create a design deliverable. Think about you need to create a whole product yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. It's actually similar to what I used to say when I was teaching, when I would teach web development. I said to everyone, like, you need your own project. I'm not going to give you a project to do. I want to know what your project is, and I'm going to work with you to figure out how to make that project happen with all the knowledge that I've had and the experience that I've had. But because working on the thing that you want to work on, you're going to learn so much more than working on something that you don't want to work on. You know, so I think that's great advice in terms of always learning. A couple of people on the show have already said something similar as well. But before we wrap up, Farid, I want you I want the people out there to know where to find you, what you're working on. You know, anything that's upcoming that you want to plug. The floor is yours over there for the audience.
Yeah, I just like to spark ideas and conversations and bounce ideas. I have a ton of ideas in my head, so I need some people to chat with and like share them. And I love to connect people, and that's the reason why I also have done like some open panels before. That's like the pleasure, the fulfillment that I'm getting from doing that. So feel free to connect on LinkedIn. That's the main place where I share some of my random thoughts. Before that, I was sharing more about design systems. Now it's like the whole product lifecycle, even like some CLI scripts that I'm building and trying new things, or Ralph agents, how you could define yourself, and these like different abstractions layers that will help you to get to the truth without thinking of this like practice specific barriers.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That sounds, that's great. All right. Well, thanks for sharing for that, Farid, and thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate it. It was a great conversation. Sorry, I'm such an idiot.
It's a new concept. Like it's even for me, it's hard to explain because this is something new. And when it's something new, you just need to bounce ideas and to get it
keep iterating.
clarified. Yeah.
Get on that loop.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So anyway, that's our show for today. Thank you so much for watching. Before you go, please help out the show by smashing it. Smash the like and subscribe button to let you know when the next time we go live, right? And feel free to continue this conversation on the official Design Systems House Discord by visiting discord.ds.house. You can see the link down there on the bottom. Play nice in those comments, and I'll see you on the internet. Bye.